Hello, everyone. Jim Laird joining you live from Diriamo, Nicaragua. Thank you for being here. Um, Kind of a surprise live today. Just testing out. I just moved, actually on the same property. I moved from one house literally next door. I'm in a much bigger, I have a much bigger patio. My was literally the house I'm living in, which the house I was living in was a good size. So this wasn't something that I was living in a small house, but I really wanted to come over here. And yesterday I spent all day moving. I had some help. It was a big ordeal getting the old place cleaned and then getting this place in order and then organizing everything. So Happy New Year to you. First of all, I wanted to start off by saying, Dr. Stillman announced publicly the birth of his son, Benjamin. They had some complications. From what I understand, he's doing much better now. Dr. Stillman announced this publicly, and uh, he's been overwhelmed by him and Michelle have been overwhelmed by the outreach of people praying for them, supporting them, and they're very grateful for that. So if you want to keep up to date on that, just subscribe to Doc. You don't have to pay for the paid subscription, but if you just subscribe to Dr. Stillman's Substack, he's going to give all his updates on his son and himself there. So um, he seems to be in good spirits, and Michelle seems to be covering well from what I've been told. So my our thoughts and prayers will continue to go out to them as they get through one of life's many challenges. So I wanted to come on here today to test out my new setup here, test out my connection, um, and then just talk about the last year in Nicaragua. I've been here an entire year. And let's start with really the challenges. Um, I would say overall, being here is a net positive, slight net positive. There are some challenges. I love the country. I love the people. The first challenge was, I had found a community. I was serious about buying a home there. Luckily, I rented. I highly recommend you do that. If you go to Costa Rica, or you go to El Salvador, Mexico, wherever you go, make sure you go and you spend time there. Just don't take people's word for it. Just don't take people's um, even if you go there for, like, I spent a week where I was at when I first moved here, and generally speaking, the consensus was fairly positive. You don't really know the actual intricacies of what happens there day to day and the issues that places have until you spent at least 6 months there. And I just came to the conclusion that the place I was at, their internet was awful. It was advertised that it was excellent, a great place for digital nomads, and that combined with some other mismanagement stuff, it just was not the kind of place I wanted to build my gym. It was a great opportunity. So that kind of is a huge negative because one of the big things that I miss is training people in person. So having a gym where I could, train people that were coming to visit and see me, or even just a few of the locals, would have been a big deal for me. When I was in Florida, um, I got to train Dr. Stillman. I had some clients that I worked in person with. I've been working virtually now for 3 years. That's essentially what I've been doing full time. And it's interesting. I've got 8 years of Oura Ring data. And if you go back 5 years when I was training, 6 to 10 people an hour, 4 to 6 sessions a day in Lexington, Kentucky, my stress levels, my sleep was phenomenal. My stress levels were very reasonable. Yet I was working a lot. 4 to 6 sessions a day in a group setting. That's a lot of work. The difference is you're up, you're moving around, you get to take breaks. You go up front, you sign for a FedEx package, you come in the back. You might have a new person that you have to really put a lot of effort into teaching them. But most of the people had been with me for a long period of time, so it was a matter of supervising, guiding, coaching, mentoring. when I do this live, when I do some of the coaching calls, that's an hour of absolutely undivided attention. That's why bartenders, hairdressers, teachers are so tired because you basically just talk for an hour. When you're up in front of the class, you're having to be animated. It's exhausting. And so my Aura Ring data is very interesting because it shows that I'm under a higher level of stress now working virtually than I was working in person, which totally makes sense to me because low level manual labor is very therapeutic for the human. And that's what I think most people don't realize. Most people don't realize this mental stress of being in front of a screen all day is so hard on your physiology. Most people don't understand that. Whereas, like, if you're up and moving around and you're doing some manual labor, like the Nikas do here, they're cutting wood, they're working in the field, they're doing chores, they're walking a lot. That's what we're made to do. Sitting in front of a screen all day, and I do get up, I take breaks, I go get in the pool that's across the way there, but it doesn't make up for the fact that I'm sitting in front of a screen all day. Even though I'm out here on my patio, I'm not indoors. It's still, and I would say my sleep since moving to Nicaragua is, it's very interesting. When I go to Panama City, in a big city, stay in a giant hotel, on the 8th floor, with all the Wi-Fi routers and all that stuff and air conditioning, my sleep is much better than it is here when I have like zero Wi-Fi, very low level EMF. I'm outdoors in natural light all day. I don't have air conditioning here. I have a fan, but I found that when I go to Panama City and I sleep in like a modern building, I sleep like a rock. I don't sleep terrible here, but I don't sleep great. And we'll get into this a little bit more down the road. Down in this, we're going to talk about, there's this opinion in the quantum world that's being pushed that like all your health problems go away if you get closer to the equator, which there's some truth to that, but it's not that simple. I wish it was. But so if you are looking to move to a community, make sure you stay there first before you actually pull the trigger and make the move. I've personally found I like living in a local community. I don't like living in a gated community. One of the reasons I didn't like the place that I was at, it was 45 minutes to the nearest ATM. And they had two ATMs in town, and sometimes they were both out. And then if they were both out, it was another half an hour to another ATM. It was 45 minutes to the closest gas station. Here where I'm at now, I can literally walk. There's two gas stations within walking distance. I have 6 ATMs within 5 minutes, but I'm still in the country. It's still rural. The other place I was at was way out there. And so it made life a little inconvenient. So I guess I'm spoiled, I'm lazy, whatever you want to call me. I mean, I don't think I am, but some people are, oh, you're just spoiled. But, when you have to drive 45 minutes just to go to a cash machine or to go to a gym, I mean, obviously that's one of the reasons I wanted to build my gym there, is because there wasn't really any around. So that would have been a huge plus. But that's really been a difficult piece, is not being able to work with people in person. And you can't, as an expat, if you open a business here, it's not to make money. It's as a hobby. There just isn't the volume here. And you don't want to take a job from Anika. Like, that's very discouraged. Like, this place has too many workers, not enough jobs. It's not like the US where there's more workers or there's not enough workers and there's more jobs than workers. That's a totally different animal. So, I'm very careful. Even though I go to the gym, the language barrier helps me, but I'm very careful not to like step on anyone's toes. I mean, I've had people ask me to help them, and I'm just like, I can't really do that for you. I'm sorry. because there are people here that actually train people, and do a decent job of it. I mean, they're getting paid like, $4 a session, which $5 a session, which is a lot of money for here. But obviously, that's not something I can live on. But and I can't work here. I'm a tourist, so anytime you go check a place out, make sure you live there first before you commit to buying a place, because a lot of times it's going to be totally different than what's being advertised. And then you need to get to know the people, the locals, the dynamic of the place. Um, Overall, I like that area. If I was going to live in that area, which is the Playa San Diego area, I wouldn't live on the resort. I would live off the resort. I love the California, San Diego area. I still have a lot of good friends there. I just went there the other day to pick up a new motorcycle. So it's a great area. I just wouldn't want to live in the gated community. That's just me. That's from what I've learned and discovered by being there. So definitely do your homework. Definitely rent a place before. And here's the thing: you can come to Nicaragua. You don't have to be a resident to buy a place here. You can be a tourist forever. You can own businesses and not be a resident. So there's all sorts of different ways. You need to find a really good attorney, and get to know people, and that's how we do it. And the best way to do that is to live among the locals. So I love the simplicity of Nicaragua. I love the people are so genuine. I love the fact that make a big difference in somebody's life with very little money. To me, is very little money. Um, I remember in the U.S., I always try to, to a fault, kind of help people. Um, in the States, there's that humongous explosion of people camping out on street corners. And I'm sure there were people that were legit, but I would buy these gift cards, $5 gift cards from Subway or whatever, and I would hand them out instead of handing out money. And I would say 60% of the time, I only take cash as an answer. People here, generally there's a few people that I've gotten to know that are kind of trying to take advantage of things, but for the most part here, um, if someone's asking for help, they really need it. It's not a joke. There are a few people that kind of work the system, and they'll kind of, but the amount of money that you're losing. I mean, it's less than $2, so it's not really anything to go overboard about. But like there's a lady here in town that walks around on the street. I mean, she literally looks like a question mark. Like her head is literally like, I can't even get in that position. Her head is curled over and she's hunched over like a hunchback. And you say hi to her or you talk to her, and she can look up and kind of see you out of the corner of her eye, but she's literally, there's something going on there. It's crazy, but she literally wanders the streets. And I'll bring her a bottle of water. I'll give her a little bit of money, and you can just tell that literally makes a huge difference for her. Some of the stores that I shop at here, like the local, like where I get my fruits and vegetables and stuff, they thank me because it's allowed their children to go to like a little bit better school or to get a little bit better clothes. So you kind of have a little more power here to really make a difference in things in a person's life. Whereas in the U.S., you really have to have a lot more money to do that. I mean, obviously you can do it with volunteering and things like that as well. But I love the fact that I can be generous here, and it goes a lot further. The cost of living here is phenomenal. I live very comfortably here on a fraction of what it would have cost me. I can't live. I could, but it would require me working a lot more and running ads and doing a lot of marketing and things like that in order to bring the kind of income that I would need to live the lifestyle in the US that I do here. Um, Not that it's extravagantly flashy or anything, but I have a gardener, I have a housekeeper, uh, They do a really good job. They help me keep this place in order, um, and allow me to focus on what I want to do. So that's a huge positive and a huge plus. The weather is really, really phenomenal. I don't get as much sun as I did at the beach, but it's different. We're just finishing rainy season here, so I'll be coming into my first summertime here, which is going to be very, very interesting. I love the fact that I'm near Messiah, that I'm near Granada. I'm near a place called Catarina. I actually went there last night for dinner. There's just so many neat restaurants, so many things you can do, so many affordable things. Messiah has a mall. Managua's 45 minutes away. This is the perfect location for me. Moving to Latin America, moving to a country where you don't speak the language, by yourself. And this is not the first time I've done this. I moved when I was in high school. I moved to California to play college football at JUCO. I didn't know anybody. I stayed there a year. Went to Virginia. Didn't know anybody. Um, Started going to Aspen from Virginia, from Liberty. One of my best friends. I met him there. I met him and his now wife, was best man at his wedding. I still talk with him on a regular basis. He still lives in Colorado, in the Aspen area. So I went to Aspen back and forth. Didn't know anybody but him. Was there for 6 or 7 years. Then went from Aspen to Arizona. Then went from Arizona to Kentucky, where I spent 20 years. And then Kentucky to Florida, from Destin area to the Tampa area, and then to Nicaragua. And in Nicaragua, I drove down. It's over a year now. The drive in itself is highly stressful. The thing about Nicaragua that you have to understand is you have to be patient. You just can't get things here as quickly as you can in the US. There's supply chain issues sometimes. For example, this past week, I went to Managua to get my motorcycle service because I was going to trade it back in on a newer bike, a bigger, newer bike, which the bigger, newer bike is really, it's much, much better. But so I was driving like the most common, I was driving a Genesis, also known as a Hennessy 150, like dual purpose dirt bike you can ride on the street. I put 13,000 kilometers on that thing in since April? That's a lot. So I'm like, I'll take it for a service before I give it back and swap it out. Surely the biggest this Genesis dealership is huge. I'm surely they'll have any parts that I need. So I drop it off at like 7 in the morning. They're usually really good. They usually have it done by noon. So I say, when do you want me back? They said noon. So I go. I come back. My motorcycle's still in pieces at noon. I'm like, what's going on? They're like, well, it's missing a chain and sprockets. Not missing. It needs chain and sprockets. The chain had gotten so stretched out that they really couldn't. They couldn't just, keep making it longer, or like adjusting the wheel adjusting it so it's longer and longer. It was reached the maximum for risk of breaking. So I said, great, go ahead, change the chain of sprockets. Well, we don't have any. We're all out. I'm like, oh wow, like that would be like Dairy Queen running out of ice cream, right? Like chain and sprockets is like something. It'd be like Valvoline, running out of oil filters on a Honda Civic or a Toyota Corolla. Like that just doesn't happen. I guess there's like a issue with shipping in Honduras. A lot of the stuff that Nicaragua gets in comes in through Honduras and is trucked down here. So they don't know when the next time they get a chain sprocket is. And I'm like, wow. So I finally get them to agree if I go to another parts store and I bring the chains and sprocket back, they'll put it on the bike for me. So for some reason, the first time since I've been in Central America, my cell phone has worked incredibly well all the way through Central America, except for this last time in Managua. All of a sudden, I get in a cab and I'm trying to get to where I need to go, and my cell phone, the reception just goes completely dead. I can't use translator. Um, Even in airplane mode, like the problem is most of the Nicas here don't read Spanish. Okay, especially cab drivers. So I got the translator, but it won't pronounce, and I'm trying to use butchered pronunciations. I get kicked out of like 4 or 5 different cabs because I've got the map, but they don't go by the map. They want the physical address, and I didn't have access to that. So finally, I find somebody that takes me over there. And in a situation like that, you just have to be patient and do the best you can. So I finally get over there to this parts store and I show them a picture of the bike. I tell them what I need. They're like, great. So they give it to me. It's all labeled correctly. I end up going back to the dealership and give them the parts. Here they are. Great. They're like, wonderful. We'll have them on in half an hour. So Price Mart is right next door, which is like Costco essentially. So I just wanted some quick food. They have like a turkey wrap. When I went over there, I think I'm the only person that orders a turkey wrap. Everyone else orders fried chicken. And fried chicken's huge here. And so I go over and I get a call. They're like, they're the wrong parts. I'm like, oh. So I go back. The parts weren't labeled correctly. It was the wrong chain, the wrong sprockets. And I was just like, the good news is the sprocket only costs like chain and sprockets only cost like $18, which is great. So they're like, well, we really can't let you leave like this. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, you guys didn't have the part, like, and you guys haven't helped me find a part. Like, so I convinced them to cut the chain, which you can cut the motorcycle chain, make it shorter to buy you some time so that, the risk of it breaking is much less. So I got them to cut the chain and we'll deal with the chain and sprockets later. But that's the kind of thing that can happen. Like anything can go wrong. And then if you don't speak the language, here in my area where I live, I know a lot of people. So I can just get on the phone and I can get on the phone there too. Like I can call one of my friends and they can talk to people for me, interpret for me if I need it. But when you're in a cab in the middle of Managua and your cell phone quits working, it just makes it difficult. You just have to be very patient. Most people are very fair. You just can't find things easily here. You have to really look. Whereas in the States, like you got Amazon, you're spoiled. You put the order in, it's at your house that day. It just doesn't happen here. And it might take you a while to find things, and some things you're just not going to be able to find. You just have to get used to that, right? So that's a positive and negative, but overall, it's generally positive. Now let's get into the health part of it. There's this huge, very prominent person online who talks about, if you move the equator, it's going to solve all your problems. Like your real big deal is you need to move the equator. You need to leave where you are. And definitely getting outside. I was having chronic reoccurring infections. And I was able to basically shut those down by getting outside in Kentucky. I was living an indoor life. I was a zoo animal. And so, but part of the reason why I wanted to move south is like, well, obviously if I get more sun, that's more redox, the healthier I'm going to be. I got a little taste of that during the pandemic. A friend of mine has a farm and I went out there during the pandemic. It doesn't really have electricity, no cell phone service. And in my mind, I was like, this is going to be amazing. No Wi-Fi, no cell phone. I'll be out here. There's, I'm camping essentially. It was not amazing. Within 2 weeks, I was depressed. I felt like garbage. I was running to town, doing Dairy Queen, grabbing bottles of wine. It was not good. The social part of it is so huge. And that's the one thing that the quantum world really doesn't talk about much. Is they're like, well, if all these diseases don't exist on the equator, and yes, that's true. There's certain as you get move south, certain diseases go away. And I know there's a lot of people that have had great relief um, moving to the equator with certain autoimmune conditions, but they don't really talk about the amount of stress. Like if I was with a family, if I had a family that came down here with me, that would probably make it a lot easier. Granted, I'm a little older too, but the emotional stress of leaving somewhere you'd been, I was there in Lexington for 20 years, moving into another culture. That I think for most people now, obviously, if you've got like a terminal illness and like you've been given XYZ, amount to live, yeah, like I would that's what I would do. I'd go to Yucatan, Mexico, and freaking get in a cenote. That's what I would do. But I've seen so many people that I've worked with on my own and also with Dr. Stillman that are not living in ideal environments that literally make massive improvements just by doing a few things like getting outside and just real basic stuff. So my thought would be before you burn the entire bridge and house down and decide to move halfway around the world to solve your health issue, make sure you do everything in your power to basically manage it where you are. Now, I wanted to move here regardless because I wanted to just live a simpler, more outdoor life. I didn't move here because of a health issue. I moved here because I know having more sun can be positive, but I'm also thinking that based on my sleep stuff, um, I don't know, for really, really Caucasian Northern European people, maybe being super close to the equator for some people might be a stressor. That's one of the reasons I was wanting to live in Ecuador is because the Andes, because I love the cold. I love going into the mountains. And there's nothing like that here. The coolest it's been since I moved here is like 76, and that feels freezing. Um, but Ecuador, the political unrest there is just absolutely ridiculous. Um, so that's kind of not an option at the moment, anyways. But I love having snow and the mountains available. I love changes of seasons. But you know, I'm just saying this notion of like, oh, just move the equator, all your problems are going to go away. No, no, it could create more problems for you. So, I'm not a medical doctor. I'm not a scientist or anything like that. But I have worked with a lot of people, and I will say, control and fix what you can do in your own backyard. Make some, simple changes. Get outside. Do the things you need to do. Maybe you need to, hardwire your house. Maybe you need to get a environmental engineer to come out and take a look at your house, make sure it's not, part of the problem. But don't think that just moving south is going to solve all your problems because it might create a few that you didn't think about. So that's basically my comment on that. Um, but overall, net positive. Um, I love the simplicity here. I love how much these people just they love family here. It's a big deal. Family is really important to these people. And I love the fact that I can travel. I get to travel a lot more than I would in the US. And I'd say it's an overall net positive. And I've got a lot of exciting things coming up here. Hopefully, in the future, I'll be able to work out some sort of in-person interaction. Um, I think that would really improve the quality of my life if I was able to coach some people in person from time to time. And we'll figure that out as time goes on. But I've got a great men's coaching group that we're starting up right here. I've got a semi-private men's coaching group. I'm also going to be releasing a women's group here shortly. That's been in high demand. So stay tuned for that. Um, but other than that, things are good. New Year's good. I'm looking forward to. I'm actually going to be going to visit. Comfort and convenience kill, Jim. Well, I will say yes, that is true, but the opposite extreme of that, gracias, is also true. Sleeping on the street, um, with wild dogs, um, trying to steal your food will also kill you as well. So we have this battle with modern life is very convenient. It's comfortable. And I actually thank you. Gracias. I actually observed this with some of the local dogs here. That's another thing about if you're going to move to Nicaragua. In a third world country, if you're an animal lover like I am, you just can't save them all. You just can't save all the dogs. And of course, it's springtime here, so that means that the female dogs are in heat. And watching like 15 male dogs like compete over the one female that's in the area, and they're running all over the place. Um, it's vicious. Nature's vicious. Now you got the other extreme. It's like, well, let's just neuter them all, and then they're going to live uh, in air conditioned homes, and they're going to die of type 2 diabetes, and then there's going to be no wild part of it. Now, as humans, we kind of get to decide to be somewhere in the middle, right? So it's a really interesting dichotomy that we have, because we have this choice as a human. But I'll tell you what, living with no air conditioning as a Northern European in Nicaragua is not comfortable. It's not easy. So I would be like a polar bear trying to live on the equator, essentially. It would, just like, an Eskimo trying to live here, not good. The opposite's the same for people that have basically grown up on the equator going, to a northern latitude. So our modern world allows us to kind of modify and change our environment. So obviously living like a true hunter gatherer is very uncomfortable and very tough on your lifespan. And then being a modern human where you're sitting on the couch watching Netflix all day and you die of dementia and type 2 diabetes, you might outlive the hunter gatherer. Just like the dogs, would you rather be a wild dog and be free and be roaming and running? Or would you rather be, an 8-year-old lab who dies of, diabetes or cancer, sitting in a living room, eating an abundance of treats? So it's some interesting stuff. Oh, I agree, man. 100 years ago, 85% of waking hours was outdoors, and I agree with you. That's why I moved here. I live majority of my life is outside. But here's the thing. So I live my entire life outdoors, but I'm still in front of a screen, right? There's plenty of people here that live their entire life outdoors, but they're struggling to eat. They're starving to death. So I'm right there with you, man. I've been preaching getting outside. I'm just saying you don't have to move the equator to do it. And most people, you don't have to live like the Amish in order to get the benefits. This is, my entire life was changed because I was spending 100% of my day indoors, training people from 5 a.m. till 8 o'clock at night. And then, I ran into Dr. Jack Cruz, and he was like, "Hey, you got to get outside. You need to literally um, become like a non-zoo human. And I totally changed my life. I fired all my morning clients. I sold my gym so I could live a more outdoor life. I walked away from something I love to do. I now live outside. I am the only time I'm indoors. I'm never under fake light. Um, is when I sleep. But I'm just saying you can go from one extreme to the other. You can go like so you're so much in nature, you're so connected in nature that all of a sudden you've disconnected from social connection. All of a sudden you don't have a lot of the things that were positive for you. So you can take it too far. That's all I'm saying. And a lot of people overlook the social part of it. You know, if you are so extreme, if you are so extreme that you basically live an outdoor life and you refuse to like go into a restaurant because there's like fake light and you're only going to live outside, um, the social isolation that most people are going to have from that is going to be horribly detrimental to their health. So it's interesting, you know, it's a wild, wild dichotomy. And you just have to do the best you can. Um, yeah, the five fundamental habits: walk outside 3 times a day, get the lights off at night, drink high quality water. And I love Paul. Paul's the person that originally got me into working in. You know, before I thought a day off from the gym was rest, but I was still training hard. Paul's the one that said you got to work in order to work out. Um, there's a you know the social connection is so huge. The book The Great Cholesterol Myth talks about this city in Pennsylvania where everybody like goes to the bars, they eat like crappy food, they smoke, they drink, and they're like they don't have like horrible health outcomes. They don't, you know, they don't their life expectancy isn't as shorter. What's the deal? And they found out it's because of the social connection that these people had was so powerful it offset a lot of the quote unquote negative side effects. So that's my only point is that um yeah, like Jack is Jackin is an absolutist. That's why Jack makes crazy statements like, you know, the only way you can get healthier in Australia is if you leave Australia. Um, you know, or things like if you know you don't need TRT. If you get enough sun, you get enough cold. Um, you won't. You can go without TRT. Right? He'll make very absolute, bold statements like that, and Paul Chek will not. Paul Chek tends to believe that everything has a little bit of nuance, right? So very rarely are there things that are absolute. Like, well, living in Chernobyl, is that a good idea? No. If you're living in Chernobyl, you probably need to leave. Um, Maggie, thank you. Um, yeah, I'm very real about um, what I've learned from people. I'm very real about the mistakes that I've made and what I've learned from myself. Um, I'm a huge believer in living a more outdoor life. Just do not discount the power of friends and people and community. Do not isolate yourself just to do something like move to the equator, right? That it's just like it's not going to work well. It's not going to end well for you. And I'm doing just fine. I'm not saying that I'm in a bad place. I'm just saying that it's a wash. I'm pretty sure if I was still in Kentucky, the winters would drive me nuts. Would it be ideal? Probably not. But I'm pretty sure I'd be doing just fine being in Kentucky because having my gym and the number of people that I worked with there was such a huge, and what I had done, um, and what I had done to make the effort to really get outside, uh, was enough. I could have stayed there and done just fine. That's what I think. That's what I believe. I believe moving here is great and it's helped me with a lot of things, but it really hasn't improved my health at all. I'd say my health is neutral, um, to where it was. So, just to give people an idea that are buying into the quantum part of things, that they hear this move to the equator, everything's going to be amazing. It's not necessarily true. There's other factors involved than just the sun. If the sun was the key to everything, then people that are starving to death in Ethiopia wouldn't be starving to death. There's food, there's social connection. Human beings are a multifactorial being. And very rarely is there, obviously, if someone's choking you to death and you don't have enough oxygen, that's obviously something you need instantly. Um, that's exactly what I'm saying. Um, Not everyone belongs in El Salvador. Not everyone needs to go to El Salvador. Not everyone needs to go to the equator. I think human beings are very, very adaptive. I think if you, everything's individual, obviously, but I think if you make the effort to get outside more, if you make the effort to, take better care of yourself, control your stress, get outside, you can make improvement just about anywhere you are. Um, I would definitely do everything you can in the current place that you're at to mitigate things instead of just pick up and move around the world thinking that's going to solve all your problems. That's basically my conclusion. And you have to come to your own conclusion. Don't ever move or do anything because somebody else told you to do it. And granted, I didn't move down here because someone else told me to do it. I did it because I wanted to do it. And I'm still going to be here and I don't plan on leaving. I love it. Um, I don't think well, maybe problems problems will follow you. Yeah. I mean, if you've got relationship issues or you've got bad habits, that'll follow you. I just think that a lot of people don't know how good they have it where they are. Um, I think a lot of people will be like, oh, it's going to be so much more amazing to be on the beach or in the sun every day. Or then when you get there and you're on the beach every day, or, you don't have winter time. I love winter. I just don't like winter in Kentucky. I love cold, sunny Colorado, Wyoming, Idaho kind of winters. Um, and when you're in Kentucky and it's the middle of winter and it's gray and it's been raining for months, you're like, oh my gosh, it'd be so amazing to be on the beach. I lived on the beach for 6 months. It gets old really quickly. I live here. I like it. I can go up in the mountains here. I can go to the beach in an hour. So I kind of get ADD with that. So that's just my whole point with this is why Nicaragua and not Costa Rica or El Salvador? So Jim asks this question. The reason I chose Nicaragua over Costa Rica or El Salvador, Costa Rica is just too expensive, um, way too expensive. Nicaragua, one, they tend to leave you alone. You pretty much mind your own business. The cost of living here is very low. It's actually safer than Costa Rica. El Salvador, when I was researching, was kind of still a little bit of a mess. Now there's a lot more Americans moving there, so it's getting a lot more expensive. But I think my second choice would be El Salvador because of a lot of the good things that are happening there with the Constitution, the president, with freedom. But Nicaragua, I like because it's easy to get to. It's very, very reasonable cost of living. The people are wonderful. The government tends to leave you be. You can be a tourist here forever. Um, that's essentially why I chose Nicaragua. Um, the cost of living was probably my number one, and the low crime. It's probably next to El Salvador, the safest country in Central America. But so thanks for the feedback. I'm glad I checked on Instagram. Um, I by no means, I just wanted to give people a real, um, like somebody who's actually moved to the South, because in the quantum world, that's all you hear about is, oh, the equator. You got to get close to the equator. You got to get close to the equator. I'm sure some people have had an amazing experience moving close to the equator. Just don't put your all your chips on it. Um, that would be my thing. And control what you can control in your environment. And then if you do, I would say you'd be better off spending a couple months somewhere than burning all your bridges and, like, losing, friendships that you've had for 20 years or whatever. Um, it's interesting. I don't know. It's a good question. But there is my thoughts. Thank you, Tim. The sun is very important, but it's one factor. And some people, I think for me, being probably close to the equator is probably maybe a net negative from what has happened to my biomarkers, my sleep. Um, I think it might be a little too much for my system. Obviously, not in the States, but here, it's really interesting to look at the actual data that I have. My body doesn't do as well here, um, as it did in Kentucky and Florida. Florida was not as good as Kentucky. Um, Kentucky, when I was in my gym, I was sleeping the best I've ever slept. I was, when I was working long hours, I was spending all my time. In the winters, obviously, my data wasn't very good, but in the summers, my data was phenomenal. Florida was okay up until I got in my car accident, and then that's kind of skewed things a little bit. But my health hasn't dramatically improved much as I've moved south. That's my only point. There's so many variables involved, like it's almost impossible to isolate any one thing, because there's, like, that's my whole point of this, is like there's more to it than just getting more sun. Yes, as I've lived a more outdoor life, my digestion has improved, my infections have gone away. So getting my circadian rhythm in order, I did that when I was in Kentucky. Would I have been able to maintain that in Kentucky? I don't know. That's the thing. The powers that be in the quantum world would say, as you get older, you need to get closer to the equator. Um, so I don't know. But health is health is multifactorial. It isn't like very rarely one thing. And in our modern world, 98% of people spend the majority of their time inside. That is a huge problem. But that doesn't mean that we have to go to the other extreme where everybody needs to move the equator, right? Yes, I'm Scottish. My heritage is Scottish and Eastern European. Yes. Um, and I think I'm discovering that too. I don't do well without four seasons. I think Kentucky was a little bad for me because I didn't get sun. I needed bright light, but I am learning that my body likes having four seasons. So the main reason I wanted to do this is to get people to think on their own. And there's more factors. We're not a computer. We're a multifactorial, spiritual slash whatever you want to call it being, and there's more than one input and output. So hasta mañana, adios. Well, no, I'm actually reading some things on Instagram here. Sorry. Um, the stress of just living in a different environment is massive, right? You don't speak the language, you don't know anybody, and I've done really well. I've made a lot of great friends, but that's just an overall stress that most people don't have to deal with, right? Whereas in the States, I was in Kentucky, I knew half the town, I knew people, I would go out with people, continuously have more of a social interaction with people. And don't get me wrong, I love it here. I'm not leaving. I'm staying here. I think I'm going to figure out some ways to maybe get some winter in that's reasonable, maybe whether it's going to the Andes Mountains or whatever. Um, I just wanted to make my big thing is I don't want to tell people what to think. I just want to get them to think. I want the people that are, if you're in front of your computer screen all day and you're spending 10 to 12 hours a day in front of a computer screen, that doesn't mean you need to like drop that and move to the equator tomorrow and do the opposite your entire day spent outdoors. What it does mean is you need to get outside a couple times a day. Start with 10 minutes, right? Start with 10 minutes. If you're eating nothing but processed food, that doesn't mean you have to go to the other extreme where you're like, perfect. It means that maybe you need to get to 80-20. So do the best you can, start where you are, and then make the improvements that you need to make. And then don't go on what somebody else is telling you is best for them. You figure out what's best for you and do it, you know? So there's my thoughts. Make sure you make decisions for yourself. And it all comes down to the 5 fundamental habits, which is walk outside 3 times a day, get the lights off at night, eat a protein at every meal, drink high quality water, have a social life. And that's the thing, if you go to such an extreme to live an isolated life that you destroy the social component of it, that's going to be a huge, huge negative, a huge strike. So you have to figure out what works best for you. I'm figuring out, correct. Don't move to El Salvador because Uncle Jack told you to. So exactly. Just because somebody, is preaching that you need to move somewhere or do something, it doesn't mean it's the best for you or your family. You need to figure that out on your own. So have yourself a great day. Thanks for listening to me kind of bounce all over the place. I really appreciate all the feedback and the discussion. This was kind of something I just kind of decided to do randomly, which was fun. So have yourself a great day. I look forward to getting back into a routine and getting back and doing some of these lives once again. And you're welcome. I'm happy to be honest. I'm always honest. Even I'm very clear about I really have nothing to hide, and I'm not trying to be just trying to make people think and help people learn from some of the experiences that I've had. So have yourself a great day. Make sure you get outside, and we'll see you again soon.